What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to talk through my top 25 Dynasty rookie rankings for this 2025 draft class. We just had the NFL Combine over the weekend, and while everything's still fresh and we have new information, I figured why not make one of these videos. We haven't done this since, I think, like week 16 in terms of just like hopping on here and giving you guys a breakdown of the top 25 players in this class. So this is going to be a nice video for you guys to be able to look at your rookie picks in Dynasty and start to put names to faces at each of these draft slots, and then also sort of figure out where these draft value pockets are as we go through the tier breaks in this class. Now, as always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and let's get straight into this tier list. Of course, this is going to be Dynasty, Rookie, Superflex, tight end premium. You can say, 1.5 tight end premium is about standard for everybody out there, but we have a couple of tiers here: 101, early to mid first, late first, early second round picks, and then honorable mentions at the end tier. And our only player in the 101 tier is Ashton Jeanty, and he comes out in the prospect model as a legendary running back prospect, putting him in the same tier as Bijan, Saquon, Fournette, McCaffrey, Zeke Elliott, Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson. All he did was weigh in at the combine. He could lift not a single finger the rest of this draft cycle, and he would still be in this bucket. Now, if you're looking at the screen share, you're like, Ron, what the hell is this? Especially if you came here from redraft season, this is my prospect model. We have the RS grades for every position: running back, quarterback, tight end, wide receiver. And the idea is that you get a RS grade 0 through 10, and that gives you a prospect tier: legendary, elite, gold, silver, bronze, all based on your hit rate across every position. Legendary is what Jeanty does. He could do literally nothing. I think that the only way that he wouldn't be legendary is if he fell outside of the first round, which is not going to happen. So he's in this bucket no matter what. Legendary running back prospect. And I will say, if you're interested in the RS grades, those can be found over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. Links will be down below in the description and the comment section down below with my Dynasty rankings, rookie RS grades. Those are all out after the combine already. And I will say why I haven't been making videos is I'm revamping the wide receiver model right now to make it more current. Going back to 07, there's just some flaws there with early declare stuff. I wanted to incorporate stuff like yards per out run, passer rating when targeted. It's going to be really cool. But it's taking me forever, I'll be honest. I'm thinking it'll be done by next week, late next week, and then I'll have a video following up on it as well. But let's talk about the next tier here, because this is where things get juicy, all right? The 102 is a tough spot this year. I'll be honest. At the top, I actually like the way that this draft class is shaping out at this point. I think it's very deep. I think it's good. But the 102 is the one spot I wouldn't be crazy about being in at this point, because there's like 5 guys in contention for this spot, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I'm going to go with Cam Ward at 102. And I say it's a cop-out answer because if I have 5 players in the same tier, just give me the quarterback. Over half of the first round of your startup draft are quarterbacks, and we see every year one of these guys get taken highly that not everyone's crazy about, right? Jaden Daniels was like the consensus QB2, QB3. CJ Stroud was the consensus QB2, QB3 in his class. Both of those guys, after their rookie seasons, went from like second round startup picks to top 6 startup picks. Now, of course, Stroud has come back down, but you could have sold high after his rookie season. All of that, to me, that makes Cam Ward have the highest ceiling from a dynasty asset standpoint. And we're just not very good at evaluating quarterbacks. So if everyone out there is like, oh, I don't think Cam Ward's that good, he's kind of like a mid-quarterback prospect, if the NFL has him as a top 3 pick lock, that's good enough for me. He led the NCAA in QBR last year. He has a 15.9% pressure to sack rate this past season as well. That's solid. And my prospect model has him as an elite player. Last year, the guys who fit out as elite was actually like all the top guys. It was Jaden Daniels was in there, Bo Nix was in there, Drake May was in there. I'm trying to think. I think there was like a 4th, but I'm not sure. I know Caleb was legendary. But with this, Cam Ward is elite statue, which does bring down his ceiling, right? He's not going to get the 700 rushing yards and 7+ touchdowns that like Lamar or Josh Allen at the peak of their powers can get you, or a Jaden Daniels down the road. But he can still have CJ Stroud in his range of outcomes, Justin Herbert in his range of outcomes, Tua, Jameis Winston as well, probably peaked in like the top 2 to 3 rounds of dynasty startups as well during their careers. So to me, he's absolutely fine. And at quarterback, we really don't know a ton, and I'd rather just lean there if I'm breaking a tie. Now, after that, let's talk about our 103, Omarion Hampton. He absolutely crushed the combine, weighed in 221 pounds, runs a 4.4, and directly after the combine, we get two mock drafts, one from Jordan Reed at ESPN, he's like their top guy, another one from Dane Brugler at The Athletic, he's The Athletic's top guy. Both of them had Omarion Hampton not only as a first-round pick, but going in the 20s. And there's a lot of good landing spots in this class as well in that range, right? The Broncos is pretty dang good. The Chargers are pretty dang good in terms of like running back landing spots. And if you went anywhere in that range, he's an absolute slam dunk pick. I almost said dump. But you can see here, these are your gold to legendary, just to kind of like widen up his range, running backs that ran 4.4 to 4.5 and then weighed in at 215 to 230. It's a strong group, right? You're getting comps like Zeke Elliott, you're getting comps like Joe Mixon, Matt Forte, David Johnson, even a guy like, Doug Martin, Noshawn Reno. All of these guys have had top 12 finishes besides Darius Geis, who tore his ACL twice, I think, and then had legal issues, which, by the way, OGs of the channel will know. I used to have a signed Darius Geis jersey in the back of videos. That had to get thrown out, is the simplest way I can say that. But yeah, he's had back-to-back 1,700-plus yards from scrimmage seasons, 38 receptions in his final year. Hampton's an absolute monster. And I will say this is going to definitely be through the lens of like what these players did at the Combine. But at the 104, you get Tet McMillan, who did nothing at the Combine. I think that he like pretty much just weighed in and did his wingspan and measurements, and that's really it. The holes you can poke in him is that he's like a solid prospect, but doesn't really jump above and beyond in terms of his metrics, his efficiency over his entire career. He's just really solid. He's like an A- wide receiver prospect, and that's pretty good. If you want to poke holes, it's the fact that maybe he can't separate too well. These are wide receiver prospects taken in the first round over the last few years, sorted by their contested target percentage. So that's just the percentage of their targets that came on contested 50-50 balls. This is a stat that would have pointed out Quentin Johnston, N'Keal Harry, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside as guys that don't separate. Josh Stockton, another one, don't separate, or just kind of jump ball specialists, and that doesn't always translate. Now, you will see directly below him is Marvin Harrison Jr., Jamar Chase. You have to sort of come down a little bit to get to Brian Thomas Jr., DJ Moore, Drake London, but it's not a death sentence. He's somebody that I really want to look and see what Matt Harmon sees on reception perception, because that'll be the tell-all. Can he separate? Can he actually run routes, or is he just bigger, faster, stronger than his competition? But, 3-year producer, super clean, A- wide receiver prospect, looks a lot like Drake London. Then our number 5 spot here, we have Trevion Henderson, 105. He didn't quite jump out the gym like Omarion Hampton. He ran fast and tested well. He just didn't come in at 220 pounds. Same deal with Quinshon Judkins as well. But he did come up. His first player in the RAS database is Reggie Bush. Now, I will say Reggie Bush a little bit faster at 4.37, a little bit more explosive with a 40.5-inch vertical. But that new archetype of running back we're seeing dominate right now, right? Like Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, Bucky Irving, these like smaller, explosive backs that don't necessarily need 25 touches per game, but can be really efficient. Trevion Henderson falls under that archetype, and I'm a pretty big fan. If we look here as well, he has one of the best explosive run rates among these top running backs. This is a chart from, I believe, at fball_insights. They're a great account on Twitter, and you can see he has a better explosive run percentage than all the top guys, better than Genty, better than Hampton, better than Judkins. So super explosive, catches passes as well. He has 2 seasons of over 25 plus receptions. And if you guys remember, especially in like Devy, when I was talking about this draft class probably like 2 or 3 years ago, Trevion Henderson was seen in a similar light as Bijan after their freshman season. Trevion Henderson played a 4th year. Bijan declared after his 3rd. Or no, they were never in the same class, but they were both viewed as like the year before Bijan, is that like Trevion Henderson was the next one coming up. Has a monster freshman year, 1,200 plus rushing yards at Ohio State, which you never see. I think it even took Zeke like a year or two to really get going in that offense, but he then had like an injury, some issues in this final year. He really stood out on this championship team, and I am a big fan. Then at the 6th spot, and this is like, I mean, dude, we're getting really strong running back prospects here in the middle of the first round. We have Quinshon Judkins at the end of this tier, another elite running back prospect here. this is, again, the hit rates you can expect for an elite running back. That is going to be 84% of the time they hit an RB1 point per game season, and they average 13.9 points per game in their first 3 years. He goes out here, weighs 221 pounds, 4.48 speed, beautiful across the board. Now, if you want to poke holes, his career high is just 22 receptions. Not a huge pass catcher, but the production's crazy. He had 1,500 rushing yards as a true freshman in the SEC on Ole Miss. Then like a down season at Ole Miss, but he still scored 16 plus total touchdowns. Goes to Ohio State. He has 16 or more total touchdowns in each of his 3 years of college football. He runs fast. He jumps high. He weighs in at 220 plus. He's an elite running back prospect here. And the RS grades have him as RB2. I always say this with the RS grades, though. I care much more about the tier than I do about the individual. Like, we're talking decimals of difference here, right? 8.41 versus 8.73. I don't really care a ton, so I'm fine with, Hampton being over him, with Henderson being over him. But he's another strong bet at the running back position. And then our last player in this tier, we will have Luther Burden. So a pretty big tier here, man, from 102 to 107. Luther Burden. Some people's wide receiver 1. Some people love him. Some people really do not like him at all. He's a polarizing one, and I'll be really interested to see how he grades out in the new wide receiver model. But he comes into the combine, weighs 206 pounds, 6 foot. To me, he comps a lot to like a DJ Moore of like these compact, do-it-all receivers. He's super dynamic. Missed tackles forced per reception is really, really strong. Someone that can take handoffs, someone that's just a playmaker. It's kind of how I would categorize Luther Burden. Now, of course, his production profile is very weird from like a number standpoint. Fine rookie season or fine freshman season, monster year 2, and then year 3 really disappointing. Where some people had him as the wide receiver 1 in this class before this season started, and then he just kind of fell off a cliff. But I think this really illustrates kind of the up and down nature of his profile from Scott Barrett. See at the top, age-adjusted yards per team pass attempt. Yards per team pass attempt is one of the better stats you can put into a wide receiver model. And you can see he comes in third in terms of wide receivers drafted rounds 1 to 2, Power 5 over the last 3 years behind Justin Neighbors and JSN. But you go below that, and if you look at every 800-yard FBS wide receiver season ranked by percentage of yards gained on screens and deep slot targets. This is kind of like your Mickey Mouse targets. Guys like Jalen Hyatt will have a lot of these, Malachi Corley, Tutu Atwell. It's not good if you pop up in this metric. Now, I will say, I think Malik Neighbors had a little bit of a high percentage in this as well. So it's not a death sentence. I'm just saying there's a wide range with Burden. It's kind of how I would put it. Like his floor is brutal. His floor is like Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore. He's not that tiny, but you get what I'm saying from like a usage standpoint. And then his ceiling is DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, like explosive playmakers. So he's a really fun wide receiver prospect, but he's really tricky, is how I would sum it up. Then we have our late first, early second tier. And I will say, this is where we get to the spot in the draft where all of the elite RS grade prospects are off the board. And at that point, when we get to gold and we look at those hit rates, right, across the board, they're pretty much like 50-50 gold prospects, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, running back. So when that's the case and everything's kind of a shaky bet, at least from my eyes and what I'm grading, I want Travis Hunter at 108. People are across the board when it comes to Travis Hunter. Some people have him as high as, like 103, 104, something like this. Some people have him. I'm not touching him in the first round. But to me, this is the part of the draft where you're overdrafting guys for a landing spot. You're drafting shaky profiles. And if that's the case, give me Travis Hunter. This is somebody who, to me, is a generational talent, is going to be an all-pro in the NFL no matter what side he chooses. So if you can give me somebody that's going to get top 5 NFL draft capital with the upside to play wide receiver, I have to swing at this spot. And if you're drafting at the 108 or later, your team's probably in a good spot where you can take a 0 on Hunter if it happens. And if you could guarantee me he plays wide receiver full-time, he would be my 102, and he'd be in contention versus Genty. That's how good I think he is. I just think he's very special, man. He's genuinely one of one. And I just think he's one of these talents that no matter what he does, he's going to be a monster. And I think this illustrates it well from Jacob Gibbs. Travis Hunter's target per per target and per route efficiency improved in games where he got more reps at wide receiver. In 14 games with a route rate above 80%, he averages over 100 receiving yards, over 1 receiving touchdown. I mean, that's just insane. And then at the bottom, fantasy points per game leaders, if only including games with a route participation above 80%. Travis Hunter, head and shoulders above the rest, 19.4 points per game. So again, like it says there, if you could guarantee he plays 80% plus of the routes, he goes up here. And I think when we start to get to shaky profiles, golds, whatever, at that point, give me Travis Hunter. And I think people are kind of talking with too much certainty on what he's going to do. I think we're going to see Jamar Chase potentially break the market this offseason at wide receiver. And a smart businessman is probably looking at, who's making what. And the wide receivers right now are killing the corners. From a money-making standpoint, playing wide receiver makes sense. This is a guy, I think from the Tennessee beat, saying two-way Travis Hunter prefers wide receiver because he's forced to condense. So if you had to pick one or the other, maybe wide receiver. But you're getting reports like that across the board, whether it's corner, whether it's wide receiver. My point is that nobody truly knows what he wants to do. This is where I am comfortable rolling the dice. Now, at the 109, I think people are going to be kind of upset about this, but I have Tyler Warren, even in tight end premium. We learned nothing new at the combine for him, right? He's a really fun player. Over 1,000 receiving yards, over 190 rushing yards, had a passing touchdown, had to play, I think it was against USC, where he snaps the ball and then he runs a route and catches a touchdown. He's insane. He can do it all. He's a really fluid athlete. The film guys will tell you that he can block as well. So we talked about it before, I think in the last video, but a scary archetype right now is that Dalton Kincaid, Evan Ingram tweener. As we get more towards the running ground and pound style of football, Tyler Warren fits that. Now, the reason why I'm being very cautious is because I've gotten my heart broken by tight ends before, man. This is, in my database since 2007, your first round tight end prospects. Now, there's no such thing as an elite tight end prospect because it's impossible, man. If there was such thing as elite tight end prospects, Noah Fant would have been a monster in the NFL. O.J. Howard would have been a monster in the NFL. Eric Ebron would have been better. It's just tight end is so tough, man. It is so tough. And it's why, right, all the best tight ends right now, or, the past 5 years, past decade, right, you're going to go to Gronk, Jimmy Graham, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz. I'm probably, George Kittle. You're going to go to Darren Waller, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta. None of those guys were taken in the top 15 picks of the NFL draft. None of those guys were first-round picks, right? So it's so much different, right? At wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., all first-round picks. Of course, there's outliers there, but at tight end, it's a crapshoot. Draft capital means nothing. And it's why, unless if you're Brock Bowers. If you're Brock Bowers, I know I left him off of that list. If you're Brock Bowers, you're Brock Bowers. But unless if you think Tyler Warren is Brock Bowers good, which, Brock Bowers is one of one, you're playing with fire drafting him over these other players in my eyes. So this is where I'd put him, but I'm just cautious with first-round tight ends in general. And a lot of the times you end up getting values later on. Like Sam Laporta and Trey McBride weren't the first tight ends taken in their draft class. I want to say Trey McBride was the Kyle Pitts class. I think so. And Laporta was drafted in rookie drafts a lot of the times. Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid were taking over him. So a lot of times you can wait till later. This is a really deep tight end class as well, where you're going to get Elijah Arroyo, you're going to get Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson, Harold Fannin, all those guys in the second, third, fourth round of your rookie draft. So I don't know. I have a tough time putting him much higher than that. Then at the 110, we have Shedeur Sanders at this late first area. Now, this seems kind of hypocritical after putting Cam Ward at 102 because he's a quarterback. But with Shedeur, he's really tricky, man, because we don't know where he's going to get drafted. This is from that Dane Brugler mock on The Athletic. Sanders is going to be a wild card in this draft. He has him going 21 to the Steelers. He could go in the top 6 or fall out of the first round entirely, and neither outcome would be a shock. He is not a first-round quarterback for a lot of NFL teams, which isn't a major surprise and matches my evaluation, but all it takes is one front office to roll the dice on his skill set. If Sanders falls out of the top 10, this would be an interesting landing spot. The Steelers are searching for quarterback. But that makes things tricky because draft capital rules all, and when you get this wide range where you could go anywhere from first overall to into the second round, and right now we have people mocking him in the 20s, that's a big deal at quarterback because it's not like other positions where you can be the third or fourth wide receiver or like the third running back and still get on the field, right? Quarterback, there's one guy. There's one guy. That's all there is. There's 32 of these guys in the NFL. So if you don't get drafted highly, there's no guarantee you're going to be the guy at like really any point. And the higher you're drafted, the longer your leash is in the NFL. And even then, we've seen short leashes with Anthony Richardson. Bryce Young was Andy Dalton car accident away from being toast. So when we look at hit rates here of quarterbacks and where they're drafted, there's a huge fall off once you get outside of those top 12 picks. We get to 13 to 32. So the back half of the first round, you go from 17.3 points per game in your first 3 seasons to 12, and then 8.1 on day 2, which is the second round. So when we have that wide of a range of outcomes, I'm no longer super interested in pushing up Shedeur Sanders. And if you want to look here as well, this is not the one. This is it. These are your quarterbacks drafted in the back half of the first round. It is essentially Lamar Jackson. It's your Jordan Love. And then that's it. We are talking, E.J. Manuel, Josh Freeman. I guess, Joe Flacco's in there. But Joe Flacco never had a top 12 quarterback finish. You had Pickett, Manziel, Whedon, Brady Quinn, Tim Tebow, Paxton Lynch. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater was solid, but these are not cornerstone dynasty assets in that range. Then we have at the 111, Emeka Egbuka. We got nothing new with the combine for him. And he has a portfolio of teammates that is almost bar none. He has played with JSN, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith, who is the second coming of Julio Jones, and then Carnell Tate, someone who will be like a first, second round pick next season. So he has 4 years, not really like a monster producer, but just fine. This is a great screenshot as well from F-Ball Insights again. And I'll actually just show this part of the chart, but you can see at the bottom, or not the bottom, but the second wide receiver on this list, yards per game is a little low, right? YPG, yards per game, 61, not great. 1.97 yards per team pass attempt, not great. But those are both kind of production, market share of your offense or market share of your passing offense kinds of stats. And again, I'm fine giving him some leeway given the target competition at Ohio State. But the efficiency is really good, right? So 2.61 yards per out run is the second best on this list that you guys can see. 124.5 passer rating when targeted is really strong as well. And then 0.49 first downs per target is really good as well. So when he gets the ball, he's doing the most with it. When he's running routes, he's doing the most with it. So to me, I'm not going to bet against a highly touted. He was like the wide receiver 1 overall in his class. Ohio State just pumps these guys out. This is about as low as you can go on Emeka Egbuka. Now, at the 12 spot, I think you guys would be mad at this one as well. We have Caleb Johnson. I'm not as crazy about Caleb Johnson as everyone else. And it's not even so much that, like, oh, he had, like, a terrible combine. And he didn't have a terrible combine. He just didn't have, like, a special one. And I like to use Lance Zierlein's running back grades that he puts out on NFL.com. You might be like, who the hell is that and why should I care? Lance Zierlein, NFL draft analyst. He has grades on there dating back to, like, 2017. And they are as strong, if not better, than NFL draft capital. And he puts them out before the draft. So they're really good. And he has Caleb Johnson, similar to me, where I think a lot of people have him publicly, or like the public perception is having him in the same tier as your Hampton, Judkins, Henderson. I would have him as a tier below that. Lance has a very low grade on him, where he is out there, in that next tier at 6.23 is like his RB7 there. And the model doesn't like him that much either. He comes out as a silver running back prospect. These are your silver running back prospects drafted on day 2 that ran a 4.5 or slower and weighed in at 220 or more pounds. I think some decent, like he feels a lot to me, and I know he's not even on this comp list, but he feels a lot to me like a Zach Charbonnet, where he's like a strong running back prospect. Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon, Blake Corum, Trey Benson, all fine running back prospects on that, late day 2, even some of them in the second round, but not any that I'm like jumping for joy over. So that's kind of where I have him. Some other comps here, James Conner, David Montgomery, Jeremy Hill, Eddie Lacy, Zach Moss. To me, that's where he falls in. That's what the RS grades kind of point him towards. Lance Zierlein seems to be in lockstep, and I think the NFL draft is going to have him drafted as the RB5. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. Only 29 career catches on 35 career games. I know it's Iowa, so that's a little bit skewed, but still really didn't have a peak year of great production until his third season. It's just not, I think it's a little bit overblown how much people like him at this point in time. Then we can talk about Colston Loveland, and it's just like the same deal as Tyler Warren. The tight ends are the wild, wild west. I have a hard time putting these guys much higher. Similar deal to Tyler Warren. I just feel better about Tyler Warren, the playmaker from a size perspective. He's going to get drafted higher. But Loveland, thankfully, what we got from the combine out of him is that he weighed in 248 pounds. He came in over 6'5", and that puts him in a fine area of like TJ Hawkinson, Tyler Eifert, Jared Cook, Hunter Henry, Pat Freiermuth, of like a normally sized tight end. And I will say he made up 38% of the Michigan offense this past season. He had J.J. McCarthy last season, but the year before that, pretty bad quarterback play. So his production from a raw standpoint isn't great, but making up 38% of your team's receiving yards is the best age 20 season for a tight end in my database. It would even be really strong for a wide receiver. So he put the Michigan offense, passing offense, on his back this past season. He's really strong. He's young. I think he's a really good tight end prospect as well. And then our last player in this tier is Mr. 429, Matthew Golden. And I'm just not crazy about him. I think he's solid. I think he's strong. He's going to get drafted highly. He'll get first-round draft capital. But a buddy of ours that I've had on the channel, Ryan Heath, I've mentioned him a ton before. I showed in the last video the combine and how it pertains to fantasy football. And he had another good point in that there's almost a negative correlation of first-round draft picks and how athletic they are, because it's almost like they're getting overdrafted. And a lot of those guys, they're getting drafted for their speed and not for their fantasy production. So when you think about like first-round speedsters, you're like talking through Brashad Perriman, Kevin White, Nelson Aguilar, Philip Dorsett, Henry Ruggs. Even Henry Ruggs is a tough one to throw out there because, you know, if not for the car thing, he was kind of figuring it out. John Ross is another one. So you guys understand. So he falls into that category. And this is, again, that screenshot from F-Ball Insights where his production is not even, like, it's lower than Egbuka. And 1.53 yards per team pass attempt is bad. 55.3 yards per game when he didn't really have, I mean, at Texas he had competition, but at Houston before that, I guess he had Nathaniel Dell. That's what he comes out on my spreadsheets, but Tank Dell. What a crazy way to drop Tank Dell in there, but Nathaniel Dell is what he is on, you know, spreadsheets, PFF, all of that. 1.85 yards per route run. So it's not even like his production's bad. His efficiency per route's bad. I guess the only thing you can point to is the first down per target and the passer rating when targeted, that when he gets the target, he's efficient, but he's not efficiently commanding targets per route. So I don't know. I think he's fine as like a 1-2 turn pick in rookie drafts, but I'm not crazy about him. I will say Lance Zierlein absolutely loves him. He has him as like a 6.4, which is like his first round grade. So he likes him. That keeps him a little bit buoyed up in the RS grades. He's a gold wide receiver prospect, which is fine. I'm just not crazy about him. And he's one of these guys without a 1,000-yard receiving yard season. But we've seen that before with guys like Ladd and guys like Puka Nacua, but those guys crushed in yards per out run. So Golden's a tricky one for me. Now, after that, these are all players that I'm fine taking anywhere in the second round of rookie drafts. And first up here at the 203, right, we had 201, 202. Then we have 203 here is Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. This might be a surprise to some, but I really like him. He's one of these toolsy guys. He's really, like, he's just a monster athlete in terms of what he can do. He's kind of like a poor, I don't even know if I'd say poor man's Anthony Richardson. He's like if Anthony Richardson didn't have good press his draft cycle. It's kind of like the best way I could put it, where he has all these tools. If you watched him against like Georgia, he's out there rushing for like 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns against him, outrunning Georgia athletes on that defense. You know, guys out there like Malachi Starks, Jalen Walker, Michael Williams. He's out there, you know, beating them to the edge, which is nuts for a quarterback. Of course, he's not perfect. He had some brutal games, the loss against Oklahoma, but he comes out as, look, this is a very small sample, so this is not me saying Milroe is 100% going to fall into this bucket, because he's not. But he is one of 4 quarterbacks to ever grade as, and this is as it stands now, right? If he goes in the 3rd or 4th round, this won't stand. But as of now, he is one of 4 quarterbacks to hit the gold grade at quarterback despite not getting drafted in the 1st round. The other 3 quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson. I added their rushing yards market share as well, so that's just the percentage of their team's rushing yards in the games that they play by season and their average. All of them are 20% plus their Konami code, which means they're a scrambling quarterback. So he has all the upside in the world, and that's the kind of bet I want to take a swing on in the second round. As like the profiles get shaky, whatever, I want a quarterback with a rushing ceiling. So even if he gets out there and like he has questions long term, what if he's, what Justin Fields was as a rookie, where he like skyrockets like a second round rookie pick, and you can go from there and figure it out. So he has a lot of ceiling, a lot of upside, 3 really strong comps. Of course, it's a small sample. There's only 4 of them. Very well, Jalen Miller could go in the second round and then still be a dud. But I am a fan. And then we'll also talk about the other quarterback, Jackson Dart. I have him as my 204 here. He's a tough one. I'm probably too low because, I mean, this is nuts. I mean, there's no way, man. There's no way. I will export this video onto a thumb drive, and I will eat that thumb drive if the NFL draft goes Shedeur Sanders 1, Cam Ward 2, Jackson Dart 3. You have my word. But he is one of these guys where he could go anywhere from like the second round, third round, all the way up to like top 10 in the NFL draft. If he goes top 10, then Jackson Dart has to be, up in this range of like a back end pick. So I'll put him here. Who knows where he gets drafted? People like him. He was the highest graded PFF passer this past season. He was a highly touted recruit out of USC. I think Caleb Williams kind of bumped him out of there. He had a really brutal game. I think it was against Florida. He had one game where it was like, maybe, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Florida, but it was just like the end of the game. He like threw like 4 different pick sixes and like game losing interceptions and like cried on the sideline. That's just like what stamped in my mind. He is a fine quarterback. Nowhere near the rushing upside as Milroe, but probably in the same range as Shedeur and Ward in terms of rushing upside. Then at the 205, we have Alec Ayomanor, one of my favorite players in this class, and he is the last gold prospect in the RS grades for this class. The model absolutely loves Alec Ayomanor. This is one of the reasons. One of the production metrics the previous wide receiver model uses is receiving yard market share. So the market share of receiving yards to make up for your team, and you have that metric at the end there, average MS receiving yard over expected. That's your average market share of receiving yards over your entire career over expectation. So based on how old you are, right? Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. So freshman, sophomore, whatever. The average top 24 wide receiver hits this threshold. He has the highest average over those thresholds per year for his career. He hit 36% plus in year 2, 36% plus in year 3. Every time that he's been on the field, he has dominated this passing offense. I think that he mossed Travis Hunter early on, maybe 2023. And then he comes out here and he absolutely crushes the combine as well. RAS throws out as a comp Roddy White, which I just thought was kind of crazy. I'm not saying he's going to be that good. I'm just saying, he looks like that archetype of receiver of just like smooth mover, can play inside and out. Roddy White, I didn't know that. Alabama Birmingham is where he went to college, but 6'1", 206, 4.4 speed, good explosion as well. So he's just, to me, super clean and someone that I am prioritizing in the second round of rookie drafts. Then we have a bunch of running backs here. This is where you can start unloading on the running backs. We have at the 206, Cam Scatabo. I have like 3 or 4 running backs here you can put in any order you want. Or actually, yeah, I'll put all of them up, but Cam Scatabo, 2,300 yards from scrimmage this past season, 24 total touchdowns, 45 receptions. He has size. He has receiving upside. He's crazy in terms of broken tackles. He had the second best vertical jump at the combine among running backs, but he ducked the 40, which is a little bit concerning. We'll see what he runs. If he runs like 4.7, that's going to be rough. If he runs like even high 4.6s at a pro day, that's going to be rough. So we'll see. I'm a big fan of his, just in terms of like from a prospect perspective. The NFL Next Gen Stats model loves him. The Dwayne McFarland's model over on Fantasy Life loves him as well. And I'm sure once I get testing for him, my model will like him as well. But Cam Scatabo, really, really strong prospect. This is another great chart from F-Ball Insights. I'm telling you guys, definitely check them out. But you can see here, it's going to be like kind of a gang of running backs we touch on here. But Cam Scatabo is in this top right of missed tackles forced per carry and then yards per out run. Super efficient on the ground and through the air. Really good prospect. And then we can talk about, God, I got to learn this name. It's Bashal Tutin. Or is it Bajal? Someone correct me down below, man. This is bad. This is embarrassing even. But Tootin is a monster. He's also in the top right of this chart. And then he also came in. Shout out to Ryan Heath again. He has a Spork model, which to me is actually better and more accurate than like an RAS. And he has him up there, 99.5. And you can see Spork percentile and then rate of running back one season over their first 3 years. He crushes the combine, comes in 4.3 speed. And he's also similar to Henderson in that Achane, Gibbs, Jamal Charles type of mold of just like super explosive, under 210 pounds type of running back. Then we can also talk about DJ Giddens too. Fits here as well, where he also crushes the combine in terms of Spork score. He's in the top right of this chart as well. 4.4 speed, 212 pounds, early declare, 50 catches over his final 2 seasons. And all of these running backs will just kind of shake out based on if they get day 2 draft capital, so second or third round, and their landing spot, right? One of these guys goes to the Chiefs, and they're all of a sudden skyrocketing up boards. Then you have Dylan Sampson as the last guy here. He doesn't really fall on either of these charts, but he's also in that day 2 mix of guys people are excited about. And I showed it earlier with Caleb Johnson, but you can see there, Lance Zierlein's kind of out of his mind with this one, but I do trust him. He has, like I said, I could have showed the chart, but his grades are really, really strong. And he actually has Dylan Sampson, you can see, as his RB3, which is kind of crazy. Above Hampton, above Judkins, above Caleb Johnson. Now, I'm not going to be that crazy, right? I have him as my RB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? But he is like, the way that I view Lance's stuff is that I'm not going to be like, oh, well, he needs to be my RB3, but he is like, oh, he needs to be someone I'm pushing up a little bit higher. So Dylan Sampson, he won't turn 21 until September. Big time producer in the Tennessee. If you ever bet like anytime touchdown odds for football, he's like minus 300 every weekend for Tennessee. And then we have Jaden Higgins, who I love in this range too. We just have like a bunch of round 2 dart throws here. But Jaden Higgins is fun as well. He comes out here at the combine, 6'4", runs a 4.47, looks like a Martavis Bryant, Nico Collins, Devontae Parker, X throwback field stretcher. Of course, there's a lot of downside with that profile as well. But he does look really fun, and you can see here his numbers are pretty dang good in terms of wide receiver career production, according to F-Ball Insights, where he was over 2 yards per out run. Not 2.24 is not amazing, but it's okay. Career first down per target, pretty dang good. Passer rating when targeted, not great. Over 2 yards per team pass attempt is solid. 68.9 yards per game is solid. Fine producer this past year. I think people are going to be really excited about how he tested and the size that he has, and we'll see him go somewhere in like late round 2, early round 3. So he's exciting to me. And then I'll also throw in Trey Harris here as well as somebody. Or no. Before Trey Harris, give me RJ Harvey. I'll put in here as well, where he also falls into, to me, the reason why he's not with the other running backs, right? And I have Higgins as kind of like this stopgap between him and the other running backs, is he, to me, is the least likely of Scatterbo, Tootin, Giddens, Sampson to get drafted on day 2. But he's also exciting where he fits in that category as well, where you can see he's in the top right with Scatterbo, Tootin, Giddens. He also tested really well, 93.2 Spork, and he looks really good. He, like Sampson, was a guy, scored a ton of touchdowns for UCF. And then we can talk about Trey Harris as well, who is an interesting one where I don't know what to think about him. He had a monster year this past year. His career yards per run is 3. First downs per target, 0.45. Like, he crushes this chart, but like his overall production isn't amazing. He played 5 years in college. He'll go in the second round. I think he's like a silver wide receiver prospect for me right now. So he's not insane, but there's definitely things to latch on with him, like yards per out run, and get really excited about Trey Harris. And then a honorable mention here at the bottom, we'll throw in the tight ends. We'll throw in Mason Taylor. We'll throw in Harold Fannin. If I had Elijah Arroyo, I'd throw in him as well. All the tight ends, I need them to test, right? I'm still waiting for Mason Taylor to test. We're still waiting for Elijah Arroyo to test. We're still waiting for a lot at tight end. And then also landing spot, draft capital, kind of shake things out there for our honorable mentions. But that is my top 25, 26 players for this 2025 draft class. As always, you can find my complete rankings, all the RS grades over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. And I will say as well, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. They are the best. Or no, that's not even up to date. I'm washed, fellas. I'm way past my prime at this point. I don't even have an updated, or yes, I do. Yeah, there it is. All right, use promo code RON. No matter first deposit up to $1,000, you'll get a free pick in the Pick'em lobby. I think that there's a Luka Doncic one for tonight, and then after that, I think that it's what's the next one? Giannis starting March 9th. But there's also they have March Madness brackets, March Madness pick'ems. A lot of cool stuff will be on there. I'll have links to that and the Patreon down below. But as always, appreciate you guys watching. I missed talking like this. I will say it's gonna be a while until I post again. We post today is Thursday. The next video I'm thinking is going to be next Sunday, next Saturday, right around Selection Sunday. Still trying to finish up this wide receiver model and get that out to you guys. And then after I finish it, push it out into the Patreon, I will talk through the 2025 wide receivers through the lens of how the new wide receiver prospect model looks at it. I will say I did want to update the running back model as well, but I'm just going to run out of time. I got to be honest, I had no plans of updating things until I kind of just got the itch to do it. So wide receiver will get updated. Maybe a small tweak to the other one because I've kind of learned some things now where, I made this prospect model back in 2020, 2021. All right, I was a young Padawan at that point. I've learned a ton about how to actually go about doing it in a better way. And we can always improve on things. So upgrades across the board, more videos coming middle of March to the end of March. Maybe I did low-key promise a March Madness bracket video. We'll see. If the prospect model is done by then, if the wide receiver model is done by Selection Sunday, we probably will have a March Madness video. We'll see. But regardless, appreciate you guys watching. It's always wild when I come back here after a while and videos are still getting views and you guys still care to show up. So love y'all, and I will see you in the next one.
Stones, like this froze. I used